You rode the number 12 bus to get here, so keep your hands off my diamonds.
Bianca Coleman's voice cut across the showroom floor, sharp enough to make the crystal cases hum. She snatched the empty velvet ring box from the counter and hurled it. It struck Imani Robinson square in the chest and dropped to the marble. 14 people stood in that Buckhead store. 3 customers, the whole sales team, and not one of them moved. A woman near the vault lifted her phone and started recording, angling for the light. Imani did not flinch. She did not beg. She bent down, picked up the box, set it back on the glass, and looked Bianca dead in the eye with a calm that had no bottom to it. Somewhere in that silence, a debt was quietly beginning to come due. If a moment like this makes your blood run hot, subscribe and drop your city and local time below. But to understand how a thrown box in a jewelry store brought down the woman who threw it, we have to go back 6 weeks. To the afternoon, a quiet gray-haired woman walked in, and every clerk on that floor turned their back on her. Imani Robinson caught the number 12 out of Bankhead at 6:40 every morning, which put her at the corner of Peachtree and Lenox by 7:35 if the bus ran right. And the bus almost never ran right. She had the walk down to a science. 11 minutes from the stop to the service entrance, behind Sterling and Vane, the kind of store where a single tennis bracelet cost more than she made in a year. She'd wipe the Atlanta humidity off her forehead in the stairwell, put on the blazer, and be standing at her case with her hands folded before the doors unlocked at 10. The blazer was sapphire blue, company issue, and it had been washed so many times the cuffs had gone soft and pale. She kept a lint roller in her locker and used it twice a day. You could be poor in that store. Most of the floor staff were, living check to check under the chandeliers. But you could not look poor. Imani understood the difference better than anyone. She ironed the blazer on Sunday nights on a towel on her kitchen table, because she did not own an ironing board, and she pressed the collar until it lay flat as a blade. She was good at the job. That was the thing nobody wanted to say out loud. Imani could read a customer the second they came through the door. Who was buying and who was browsing, who wanted to be flattered and who wanted to be left alone, who was celebrating and who was apologizing. She'd sold a man a $30,000 anniversary, set on a Tuesday afternoon in March, by doing almost nothing at all, just standing quiet and letting him talk himself into the ring he already wanted. She remembered names. She remembered that Mrs. Okafor's daughter was named Chidi and was applying to Spelman. She asked about it every time, and Mrs. Okafor came back and back and back. Her manager took the commission on the Okafor sales. All of them. Bianca Coleman had run the Buckhead location for 2 years, and she ran it like a woman who had clawed her way up one fingernail at a time, and was terrified of sliding back down. She wore crimson red almost every day. Dresses that fit like they'd been sewn onto her, red-soled heels that clicked out a warning ahead of her down the marble. She was beautiful in a hard, lacquered way, and she had a gift for cruelty that she'd polished into something almost casual. She did not yell most days. She did worse than yell. She made you small in front of people, and then acted like you'd done it to yourself. You're a stock girl who got lucky with her face. Bianca told Imani once in the break room, over the top of a non-fat latte, "Don't confuse a good week with a future." Imani said nothing. That was the protocol, the one she'd built for herself over 8 months. Do not react. Do not give her the show she's fishing for. Keep your eyes level and your hands still, and let her talk into the silence until she gets bored of hearing herself. The rest of the floor took their cues from Bianca. There was Destiny, who whispered. There was Amber, who laughed a beat after Bianca said anything cutting. a laugh that came out of her like a hiccup. There was a security guard named Reggie who watched all of it from his stool by the door and never said a word, though sometimes when Bianca's back was turned, he'd catch Imani's eye and give her a look she couldn't quite read. Pity, maybe, or something closer to a warning. Imani needed the job. That was the whole architecture of her silence, and she never let herself forget the shape of it. Her mother, Gloria, had a heart that was failing by degrees. Congestive heart failure, the cardiologist called it, which was a soft phrase for something that was neither soft nor slow enough. The medication ran $418 a month, even with the plan. The plan came from the job. Her younger brother, Trey, was 15 and getting tall and eating like it was a competitive sport, and he needed shoes. And he needed to not see his sister cry, so she did not cry where he could see her. She had 2 years of a business degree from Georgia State and a balance of $34,000 in student loans she'd stopped paying. The semester. Her mother collapsed in the kitchen. She could have finished. She thought about it the way you think about a house you drove past once and loved. Someday, when there was room, there was never room. At night, after her shift, Imani did the second job nobody paid her for. She'd come in off the number 12, drop her bag by the door, and go straight to her mother's room to check the pill organizer. The plastic one with the days of the week, Sunday through Saturday. Each little compartment, a small negotiation with the pharmacy. She counted them backward in her head, like a woman counting stairs in the dark. 11 days of the beta blocker left. 9 of the other one. She'd learned to read her mother's face for the days it was harder to breathe, and she'd learned to keep her own face smooth while she read it, because Gloria Robinson had spent her life reading her daughter right back, and the fastest way to scare a sick woman was to let her see fear on the face of the person taking care of her. "You eat?" Gloria would ask, every night, the same question, because it was the one piece of caretaking she had left to give. "I ate, Mama." "You didn't. I can tell." And she'd point Imani toward the kitchen, and Imani would make herself a plate she didn't want, so her mother could feel like a mother. And that was the trade. That was the whole quiet economy of that apartment. Everybody protecting everybody else from the truth of how thin the margin was. Trey knew more than he let on. 15 and watching. He'd started leaving his gym shoes by the door with the sole peeling and never mentioning it. And Imani had figured out what that was. He wasn't asking. He was making sure she didn't notice he needed something, so she wouldn't have to feel bad about the something she couldn't give. A 15-year-old boy managing his own sister's guilt. That was what poverty did that the numbers never showed. It made children careful. So when Imani stood at her case each day and let Bianca's words slide off her, it wasn't only pride that kept her quiet. It was a peeling shoe by a door, and a plastic organizer with the days of the week, and a mother who asked if she'd eaten. Every insult she swallowed for them. So when the gray-haired woman walked into Sterling and Vane on a Thursday in the last week of September, tired and plainly dressed, and the whole floor turned its back on her, Imani was the only one who moved toward her instead of away. The woman was maybe 70. She wore a charcoal gray cardigan, good wool but nothing that announced itself, and flat shoes made for walking. And she carried a canvas tote instead of a purse. Her hair was silver and cut close to her head. She stood just inside the door and looked around at the cases the way people did, when they weren't sure they were allowed to be there. And Imani watched Bianca clock her from across the room and dismiss her in the same half-second. The flick of the eyes down and up, the small tightening at the corner of the mouth. "Not a buyer," Bianca murmured to Destiny, not quite quietly enough. Watch the door doesn't hit her on the way out. Destiny did her whisper lore. Amber, restocking a case nearby, angled her body away from the old woman like poverty might be catching. Imani crossed the floor. "Good afternoon, ma'am." She said it warm and full, the way she'd say it to a woman in a Chanel suit, because there was no other way she knew how to say it. "Can I get you anything?" "Water. It's 101 degrees out there today. I know that walk from the parking deck is brutal." The old woman looked at her, and something moved behind her eyes. Not surprise exactly, more like a person confirming something she'd suspected. "Water would be lovely," she said. "Thank you, baby." Imani brought her a glass. The good glasses, the ones with the store's mark etched into the base, the ones they were supposed to save for serious clients. She didn't think about it. She just brought the woman the good glass, because the woman was thirsty, and it was hot. "Take your time," Imani said. "You want to just look, you look. You want to try something on, you tell me, and I'll open the case. No rush at all." "My name's Imani. Imani." The woman said it back slowly, like she was tasting it. "Purpose. Your mother named you well. She did her best." Imani smiled. "She named my brother Trey because he was the third boy she was going to try for. And then she stopped after him, so the name's kind of a joke on all of us." The woman laughed at that, a real laugh, surprised out of her. And for the next 40 minutes, she moved slow through the store, and Imani stayed near her, not hovering, just there. She told the woman about the estate collection they'd just brought in. The Art Deco pieces from the 1920s. A sapphire brooch that had supposedly belonged to a railroad man's widow. She didn't pitch. She just talked, the way you talk to somebody's grandmother. And the woman asked good questions. Sharp ones, actually. About carat weight and clarity, and where the stones were mined. Questions that told Imani this woman knew more about jewelry than she was letting on. Across the room, Bianca watched with her arms crossed and her lips pressed white. At the end of it, the woman stopped in front of a small case near the register. Inside was a pair of earrings, gold, nothing dramatic, a pair of little twisted knots that caught the light quietly. "Those," the woman said. "I'll take those." "Yes, ma'am." Imani unlocked the case. "How much are they, baby?" "They're 2,200, Imani said, and she said it plainly. No apology and no pressure. Because she'd learned that flinching at your own prices was the fastest way to make a customer flinch too. The woman nodded and reached into the canvas tote and pulled out a slim black card. No bank name on the front of it, just her name embossed in the corner and a weight to it that Imani felt when she took it. She'd handled a lot of cards in 8 months. She knew what the heavy ones meant. She ran it. It cleared. She wrapped the earrings in tissue and put them in the small bag and tied the ribbon. And the woman watched her hands the whole time with a look on her face. Imani couldn't name. "You have a good way about you," the woman said, taking the bag. "You made me feel like a person, not a mark. You'd be surprised how rare that is in a place like this. You are a person, ma'am. That's not a hard call to make." The woman smiled, and there was something almost sad in it. "No," she said. "It shouldn't be." She left. Imani watched her go through the glass doors and out into the white blaze of the afternoon. Canvas tote over her shoulder, and then she turned back to the floor, and Bianca was already coming at her. Heels ticking. What was that? "A sale," Imani said. 2,200. You gave a bag lady one of the etched glasses. She was thirsty. You spent 40 minutes on a $2,000 transaction while there were actual clients on the floor. Bianca's voice had gone low and flat, the dangerous register. "You want to run this store like a soup kitchen? Go find a soup kitchen. This is sterling and vain. We have a standard." Imani looked at her. She could have said, that there had been exactly 2 other customers on the floor the whole time, and that Amber had handled both, and that the standard Bianca kept invoking seemed to apply only to how people looked and never to how they were treated. She could have said a lot of things. She said, "Understood." And here is the thing I want you to sit with, because it matters for everything that comes after. Imani Robinson was not being weak in that moment. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is a woman doing the math, the rent, the medication, the brother's shoes, and deciding that her dignity is worth more than the satisfaction of one good sentence she'd pay for with her job. She swallowed it. She swallowed a lot of things. But swallowed things do not disappear. They wait. The commission on that sale, the $2,200, the $66 in Imani's pocket that would have been half a copay, posted to Bianca Coleman's employee number by end of day. Imani noticed. She always noticed. She'd started noticing months ago. What Bianca didn't know, what nobody in that store knew yet, was that the woman in the charcoal cardigan had noticed some things too. And that woman was not a bag lady. She was not lost. She had come into that store on purpose, on a Thursday, alone, the way she came into a different store every few weeks, quietly in flat shoes, carrying a canvas tote, because 40 years of building a company had taught her that the only way to know how a place really treated people was to walk in looking like someone it could afford to mistreat. Her name was Vivian Sterling. The first name on the sign over the door was hers, and she had just watched the best salesperson in her Buckhead location get robbed of a commission in real time by a manager who'd thrown away a good glass of water like kindness was a thing you could waste. Vivian Sterling did not build a jewelry empire by making decisions fast. She built it by watching and waiting and being underestimated, and she had learned, a long time ago, that the people who revealed the most about themselves were the ones who thought no one important was in the room. So she did not walk back into that store the next day and fire Bianca Coleman on the spot, which is what a lesser story would have you believe happens, and which is not how any of it works. She went home to her house in Buckhead, a real house, set back from the road, the kind with a gate, and she sat with a cup of tea, gone cold in her hands, and she thought about a girl named Imani who'd brought her the good glass. Then she made a phone call to her grandson. Xavier Sterling was 34 and ran the company day to day now, which was the arrangement they'd settled into over the last 5 years. Vivian on the board as chair, Xavier as chief executive, the two of them circling each other with a wary, deep affection that had survived his father's death and her stubbornness and his. He was a serious man who wore black suits cut close and spoke slowly and made people nervous by simply not filling silences. He'd learned that from her, Grandma. His voice on the phone was careful. "You went walking again." "I did. You know I hate when you do that alone." "I know." She could hear him not lecturing her, which was its own kind of lecture. "Xavier, I want you to pull the numbers on the Lenox location. Sales by associate, the last 12 months. And I want you to pull them quietly, through the auditors, not through the regional manager. I don't want a soul in that store to know anyone's looking." A pause on the line. "What did you see?" "I saw a young woman do everything right," Vivian said, "and I saw her manager take the credit for it while it was still warm. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before." She set the cold tea down. "Pull the numbers and let's find out if I'm wrong." The numbers took 11 days to come back, because Vivian had insisted on doing it right. Through the third-party audit team the company used for its annual review, so that no one could later say it was a witch hunt or a whim. And here is where the story slows down, because this is the part that matters. And it is the part the store never saw coming. Not a magic reveal, not a fairy godmother, but the slow grinding turn of a record system that does not lie. At Sterling and Vane, every sale ran through a point-of-sale terminal that logged the transaction, the item, the price, the time, and the employee number of the associate who rang it. That number determined the commission. It was supposed to be simple, and it was supposed to be honest, and for most of the company's stores, it was both. At the Lennox store, something was wrong with the pattern. Imani Robinson had, by the raw data, spent more hours on the floor with more customers than any other associate. The camera timestamps confirmed it. She was the one at the case. She was the one opening the vault. She was the one walking clients to the register. But her commission number was near the bottom of the store, and a suspicious amount of the high-value commission. The anniversary sets, the estate pieces, the sales that took real skill to close had posted to a single employee number. Bianca Coleman's. Managers at Sterling and Vane earned an override, a small percentage of the whole store's sales, on top of their salary. They were not supposed to earn direct commission on individual sales, because they weren't supposed to be closing individual sales. They were supposed to be running the floor. Bianca was doing both, on paper. On the video, she was in her office. On the register log, she was closing $40,000 sets she had never touched. Wage theft. That is the legal name for it, though most people don't know the term until it's been done to them. It is not a small thing, and it is not a gray area. When a manager alters records to divert earned commission from the worker who earned it into her own account, that is theft, plain, and it is a violation of federal labor law. And it happens far more often than anyone likes to admit, in nice stores with chandeliers, to people who are too afraid of losing the job to say a word. Imani had said no words, but she had done something else. Back in July, on a Tuesday, she'd closed the Okafor anniversary set. $8,400, a full afternoon of work, a sale she'd nurtured across 3 separate visits. That evening, changing out of the blazer in the locker room, she'd checked the commission portal on her phone, the way she did every night, and the Okafor sale had posted to Bianca, not split, not shared, gone. She had stood there in the locker room with her thumb over the screen and felt something turn over in her chest, slow and cold. And then she had done the only thing a person in her position could safely do. She took a screenshot. The transaction, the amount, the reassigned employee number, the date, the timestamp in the corner, reading 8:47 p.m. She saved it to a folder on her phone she'd labeled, with no drama at all, just the word receipts. Over the following weeks, the folder had grown. Screenshot after screenshot. She never showed anyone. She never filed a complaint, because she knew exactly how that complaint would go. She'd be called into Bianca's office, and Bianca would explain in her flat, patient voice that Imani had misunderstood the system, that the sales had been team efforts, that Imani should be grateful for the mentorship. And then, within a month, there would be a reason to let her go that had nothing to do with any of it. A late arrival, a dress code violation, a customer complaint that materialized from nowhere. So Imani kept the folder and kept her mouth shut and kept coming in on the number 12 bus. And she told herself the same thing every morning in the stairwell. Not forever, just for now. Just until Mama's stable. Just until Trey's older. Just until there's room. She did not know that 11 days of quiet auditing were closing around Bianca Coleman like a hand. She did not know the woman in the charcoal cardigan had a name on the sign. She only knew the work, and she did the work. And she was doing it the Monday afternoon that Xavier Sterling walked into the Lennox store for the first time. He came in without announcing himself, in one of his black suits, and the floor did not know what to do with him. Bianca knew who he was. Every manager knew the CEO's face from the annual meetings, and Imani watched something happen to her boss that she had never seen before. Bianca got flustered. The red-souled confidence cracked. She came at Xavier with a smile stretched too wide and a voice pitched too high, offering him coffee, offering him a tour, offering him things he had not asked for. "I'm just looking," Xavier said, which was almost funny, a billionaire saying the thing browsers say. "Don't let me interrupt the floor." He walked the store slowly. He looked at the cases, and he watched. Imani could feel him watching, the way you feel a change in air pressure, and what he was watching was her. She was mid-sale, with a young couple picking out an engagement ring on a budget that embarrassed them, and she was doing what she always did, making them feel like the budget was plenty, steering them gently toward a setting that would look like more than they'd paid. She closed it. The young man shook her hand twice. When they'd gone, Xavier came over. Up close, he was taller than he looked, and his stillness was almost unnerving. "That was well done," he said. "You didn't upsell them past what they could carry. Most people would have." "They came in scared," Imani said. "You don't sell scared people the expensive thing. You sell them the right thing, and they come back for the expensive thing in 10 years. Something flickered across his face. He almost smiled. "What's your name?" "Imani Robinson." "Robinson." He nodded slowly, and she had the distinct feeling the name meant something to him, that he'd heard it recently, though she couldn't imagine where. "How long have you been on this floor, Ms. Robinson?" 8 months. "And how do you like it?" She looked at him. It was a simple question, and it was not a simple question, and she was aware of Bianca hovering 20 feet away, pretending to arrange a display, straining to hear. Imani thought about the folder on her phone. She thought about the number 12 bus. She thought about all the true things she could not afford to say. "I like the work," she said. "I'm good at the work." It was, she would realize much later, exactly the right answer, because it was true, and because it left out everything, and because a careful man like Xavier Sterling heard the shape of what a person left out. He held her gaze a moment longer than was comfortable. Then he nodded, thanked her, and moved on. And by the time he left the store 15 minutes later, Imani had half convinced herself she'd imagined the whole thing. She had not imagined it. That night Xavier called his grandmother. "I found your salesperson," he said. "Grandma, the numbers are worse than you think. This isn't sloppy management. This is deliberate. She's been rerouting commission for at least a year, and not just from the Robinson girl, from 3 of them. But Robinson's the worst hit because Robinson sells the most." Vivian was quiet on the line for a moment. "Then we do it correctly," she said. "We do it so it holds. I don't want that woman merely fired, Xavier. Fired, she lands at another store and does it to another girl. I want it documented, I want it airtight, and I want it to mean something. That takes time." "I have time," Vivian said. "The question is whether that child does. Keep an eye on her. If Coleman moves against her before we're ready, we move first." They were ready to be patient. They were prepared to build the case slowly, correctly, the way it should be built. Bianca Coleman did not give them the luxury of slow. Because Bianca had seen the CEO of the company walk onto her floor and make straight for a stock girl in a faded blue blazer, and had watched him talk to that girl for 5 minutes, with a look on his face. He had not once turned toward Bianca herself. And Bianca Coleman, who had clawed her way up one fingernail at a time, and was terrified of sliding back down, understood threats the way a drowning person understands water. She decided Imani Robinson had to go. Soon. and she decided it would look like something Imani had done to herself. She started laying the ground the way she did everything. In small moves, nobody would remember as moves until later. She pulled Destiny aside by the coffee machine and mentioned, voice low and worried, that inventory had been coming up short lately. And wasn't it strange that it started around when Imani did? She said it like a confidence, like she was troubled by it, like she almost hoped she was wrong. Destiny carried it to Amber, by the end of the shift the way Bianca knew she would. By the next week, the two of them were watching Imani's hands at the cases, and Imani felt it. The temperature of a room changes when people start watching your hands, but she couldn't have named what it was, only that the floor had gotten colder in a way she didn't understand. That was the cruelty underneath the cruelty. Bianca didn't just plan to frame Imani. She planned to make the other associates into witnesses who'd half believe their own testimony, so that when it happened, it would land in a store that had already been prepared to accept it. She was building a jury before there was a crime. She'd done a version of it before at her last store to a girl named Kesha, whose name Bianca had already made herself forget, because forgetting was part of how she slept. None of them knew they were being used. That was the point. A good frame doesn't need liars. It just needs enough decent, frightened people willing to look away at the right moment. And Bianca had spent 2 years teaching that floor exactly how to look away. The frame took Bianca 4 days to build, and she built it the way she did everything, with a cold competence that would have been impressive if it hadn't been aimed at destroying a woman who'd never done a thing to her. It started with a ring, a platinum band set with a 2-carat cushion-cut diamond, retail $12,000 even, from the case Imani worked most days. Bianca pulled it from inventory herself on a Wednesday evening after close, logged it out under a vague notation about a repair assessment, and slipped it into her bag. The store's system showed the ring as in-house, in the repair queue, which meant no alarm, no missing inventory flag, nothing that would draw an auditor's eye. She was careful. She was always careful. 2 days later, she planted it. Employee lockers at Sterling and Vane did not lock in any serious way. They were cheap steel cabinets with a flip latch, more suggestion than security, and everyone knew it. On Friday afternoon, during the lunch rotation when Imani was on the floor and the locker room was empty, Bianca walked in with the ring wrapped in a square of the store's own tissue paper and pushed it to the back of the top shelf of Imani's locker, behind a spare pair of flats and a bottle of the lotion Imani kept for her hands. Then she walked out, and she waited 2 more days, and on Sunday she called the district loss prevention line and reported, in a voice she made sure to keep reluctant and pained, that inventory didn't reconcile and that she had concerns about an associate. Here is what I need you to understand about the next part, because it is the ugliest stretch of this whole story, and it is also the truest. When a poor woman is accused of stealing from a rich store, the accusation moves faster than the truth ever could. It does not wait for evidence. It arrives already believed. Monday morning, before the doors opened, they brought Imani into Bianca's office. There was a man from District Loss Prevention, a heavy-set man named Doyle with a lanyard and a clipboard, and the tired eyes of someone who'd done this 100 times and stopped seeing the people across the desk as people. There was Bianca, arranged behind her own desk with her hands folded and her face composed into a mask of wounded disappointment. And there was Imani, still in her coat, her bag over her shoulder, the fluorescent light humming overhead. "Mrs. Robinson," Doyle said, "we've had a report of missing inventory, and in the course of reviewing that report, store management conducted a locker inspection." He let that sit. A ring valued at $12,000 was recovered from your locker this morning. The room tilted. Imani felt it go, felt the floor drop an inch and come back, and she gripped the strap of her bag and made herself breathe. I didn't take anything, she said. It was in your locker. Anybody can open those lockers. There's no lock. You know there's no lock. She heard her own voice staying level and was distantly amazed by it. I have never taken a thing out of this store that wasn't mine. Bianca spoke then, soft, so soft, the register of a woman being brave through her heartbreak. Imani, I want to help you. I do. I've seen you struggling. The bus. Your family situation. I know things are hard. Nobody's saying you're a bad person. But the ring was in your locker, and I have to protect the store. She turned her palms up. If you just tell us what happened, this can go easier for you. And there it was, the trap inside the trap. Confess, and it goes easy. Deny it, and you're not just a thief, you're a liar. Imani looked at Bianca Coleman across that desk, and for one long moment she understood exactly what was happening to her, understood it completely. The ring pulled from her own case, the empty logic of the locker, the tender voice doing the knife work. She understood that this woman had decided to end her, and that the machinery of the store was going to help. She did not cry. She wanted to. Her mother's medication was $418 a month, and it came from this job. And Trey needed shoes. And there was a folder on her phone labeled receipts that proved this same woman had been stealing from her for a year. And if she pulled it out right now in this office, it would look like a desperate deflection. A cornered thief throwing dirt. She knew that. She was thinking more clearly in that moment than she had thought in months. I want to see the security footage, she said. Doyle glanced at Bianca. The footage? The locker room doesn't have cameras, Imani said. But the hallway to it does, and the floor does. If somebody put that ring in my locker, the hallway camera saw them walk in. If I put it there, the camera saw me. So let's watch it, right now. Pull it up. The office got very quiet. Bianca's composure held. She was good, genuinely good, and only someone watching for it would have seen the small thing that happened at the corner of her jaw. The footage retention on the back hallway is limited, she said smoothly. And frankly, Imani, watching hours of video isn't loss prevention's job. The ring was in your possession. That's the finding. That's not a finding. That's an accusation with a shrug attached. The words came out of Imani flat and hard, and she saw Doyle's tired eyes flick up to her, the first time he'd really looked at her as a person. You reported it. You found it. You searched the locker. And you don't want to look at the one thing that would show what actually happened. She kept her eyes on Bianca. Why is that? For a second, just a second, nobody said anything. And in that second, the whole rotten architecture of it hung visible in the air. And Imani thought, absurdly, that she might have done it, that the sheer wrongness of it might be enough. Then Bianca stood up. You're suspended effective now, pending investigation, she said. All softness gone, the real voice back. Turn in your badge and your blazer. Doyle will walk you out. She smoothed her red dress. I tried to give you a chance to make this easy. Remember that. They walked her out through the store. That was the part that would stay with Imani longest. Not the office, but the walk. Past the cases she'd worked for 8 months. Past Amber, who wouldn't look at her. Past Destiny, who whispered something to Amber the moment she passed. Past Reggie the guard, who stood up from his stool as she approached, and who, as she came level with him, as Doyle steered her toward the door, said in a low voice, not moving his lips much, back hallway camera runs on a 30-day loop, not 72 hours. She lied about that. Whatever you gotta do. Imani didn't break stride. She didn't look at him, but she heard it, and she folded it away with the folder on her phone. One more true thing saved for later. Then she was outside in the heat with her bag on her shoulder, and no badge, and no blazer, and no job, and the number 12 bus wasn't due for 40 minutes. So she walked. 3 miles in 101 degrees. Because a moving body is easier to live in than a still one when your whole life has just come apart. She did not call anyone. Who would she call? She walked. And she thought. And by the time she got back to Bankhead, the shock had burned off and left something harder underneath it. Something that had been forming for 8 months and had just now finished. She was done being quiet. Not loud. Imani was never going to be loud. But done swallowing. She sat at her kitchen table. The same table she ironed the blazer on. And she opened the folder on her phone. 14 screenshots. A year of stolen commission. Dated and time-stamped and undeniable. And then she'd opened her banking app and looked at the balance. And she did the math she'd been avoiding. How many weeks until the medication ran out? How long the last check would stretch? And the number was small and getting smaller. And she set the phone down and put her face in her hands. Once, briefly, and let herself feel the full weight of it. Then she picked the phone back up. Because feeling it was allowed. Drowning in it was not. She had a mother down the hall who needed her steady. What Imani did not know, sitting at that table, was that Xavier Sterling had gotten a flag that same afternoon. An automated alert from the audit team he'd embedded, notifying him that Associate Imani Robinson had been suspended pending a theft investigation. He'd read it twice. Then he'd called his grandmother, and his voice, usually so slow and careful, had not been careful at all. She moved, he said. Coleman moved. She's framing the Robinson girl for theft. Suspended her today. Vivian Sterling was quiet on the line, and when she spoke, her voice had a cold in it Xavier had heard maybe 3 times in his life. Then we stopped being patient, she said. Pull the back hallway footage, the full loop. Not whatever they claim they kept. Pull the inventory logs on every item that's gone through that repair queue in the last month. And Xavier, a pause. Find out how that child is doing. Quietly. A woman who's just been called a thief for something she didn't do, with a sick mother at home, is a woman who might do something desperate before we can make it right. I've seen it. Make sure she knows, however you do it, that this is not over. That someone is coming. Xavier did something then that he would not have been able to explain to a board, and did not try to. He got the address from the personnel file, and the next evening, instead of sending someone, he drove to Bankhead himself. The Bankhead apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building, with a broken elevator and a stairwell that smelled like somebody's good cooking. And Xavier Sterling climbed it in his black suit, feeling more out of place than he had felt in years, which was a feeling he'd forgotten he could have. He knocked. He heard a television, and a boy's voice, and then footsteps. And then, Imani opened the door with the chain still on, and looked at him through the gap, with an expression that went from confusion to recognition, to something guarded and hard. Mr. Sterling, Miss Robinson, I'm sorry to come to your home. I didn't know a better way to do this. Behind her, a boy's voice. Manny, who is it? And a woman's voice, thinner, from further back. Baby. Who's at the door? It's for work, Mama. Give me a minute. She stepped out into the hall and pulled the door mostly shut behind her. And now it was just the two of them in the stairwell, with the good cooking smell, and she folded her arms. How do you know where I live? Personnel file. I shouldn't have it, and I used it anyway. He didn't dress it up. I know what happened yesterday. The suspension. The theft accusation. He watched her face close further. I'm here to tell you it's not going to stand. That's all. I'm not asking you for anything, and you don't have to say a word to me. I just didn't want you to spend one more night thinking nobody knew the truth." Imani looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet and even, and it had an edge on it he hadn't earned and knew he hadn't earned. "You want to know what I think, Mr. Sterling? I think it's a real nice thing for a rich man to drive to the hood in a suit and tell a girl he's on her side. I think it probably feels good." She wasn't cruel about it. She was just clear. "But I've had people be on my side before. It's cheap. Being on somebody's side doesn't cost anything, so you'll forgive me if I don't throw a parade." He took that. He didn't flinch from it. "You're right," he said. "It is cheap. So I won't tell you I'm on your side. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and then you can judge me by whether I do it." He met her eyes. "There's an audit. It's been running for weeks before any of this. Bianca Coleman has been stealing your commission for over a year. The Okafor set, the anniversary pieces, all of it. We have the records. And the ring in your locker, we're pulling the real footage, the full 30-day loop, not the 72 hours she claimed. If she walked into that locker room, the hallway camera has her." He paused. "You don't have to believe me. Just don't do anything. Don't quit. Don't sign anything. Don't disappear. Give me 2 weeks." Something moved behind Imani's eyes at the words the Okafor set. He'd named the specific thing. He knew about the Okafor set. That was not a thing a man said to be kind. That was a thing a man said because he'd seen the records. "Why?" she said. "Why do you care about my commission?" Xavier was quiet a moment. "Because my grandmother came into your store 6 weeks ago in a grey cardigan, and you brought her a glass of water in the good glass," he said. "And you talked to her for 40 minutes, like she mattered, when everyone else on that floor looked at her like garbage. He watched that land. You didn't know who she was. That's the whole point. You didn't know, and you were kind anyway. Do you understand what that's worth? Do you understand how rare it is?" Imani stood very still in the stairwell. "The woman in the cardigan," she said slowly. "Vivian Sterling, she's the chair of our board. Her name is the first name on the sign." He almost smiled. "She's been mystery shopping her own stores for 40 years because she doesn't trust anybody's reports but her own eyes. She saw everything. Ms. Robinson. She saw Coleman take that glass out of your hand and complain you'd wasted it. She saw your sale post to Coleman's number by end of day." His voice dropped. "She sent me to make sure you were all right. Are you all right?" And that was the question that nearly undid her, not the accusation, not the audit, but a stranger in a suit asking, in a stairwell, whether she was all right, when she had spent 8 months making sure nobody ever had to ask. Her throat worked. She looked away down the stairs, at the good cooking smell coming up from the second floor, and she got herself back. "My mother's medication comes from that job," she said. "So no, I'm not all right. But I'm still standing, and I've been not all right before, and I'm still here." She looked back at him. 2 weeks? 2 weeks. "And if you're lying to me, if this is some rich man game, then you'll have lost nothing you haven't already lost." Xavier said, "And you'll have been right about me, and I'll deserve every bit of what you think." He held out a card. Just a card, his direct line. "You call me if she does anything else. Anything, day or night." Imani took the card. She did not thank him. She wasn't ready to thank him, and he seemed to understand that. And the fact that he didn't push for thanks was the first thing about him she'd let herself half trust. He went back down the stairs. She went back inside to her mother and her brother and the television, and she put the card in the folder drawer of her mind, next to the screenshots and Reggie's whispered warning. And she did the hardest thing there is to do, which is wait when your whole life is on the table. 2 weeks. She'd give him 2 weeks. She would not need all of them. Because the thing that turns a quiet audit into a public reckoning is timing. And the timing was already set. Sterling and Vane held a regional showcase every fall. A gala at a hotel in Buckhead, the new estate collection unveiled to top clients and press, and every store manager in the Southeast. Champagne and photographers and a stage. It was, in the company's own language, the most important night of the retail year. Bianca Coleman had been planning her outfit for a month. She intended to be seen there. She intended to be photographed near the CEO and the chairman. She intended, in fact, to use the gala to cement herself, now that the threat of the stock girl had been so neatly removed. Vivian Sterling intended the gala for something else entirely, and she made one phone call that Imani did not know about, to a number in the personnel file, and left one message in her clear old voice. Mems. Robinson, this is Vivian Sterling. You brought me a glass of water. I'd like you to be my guest at the regional showcase this Saturday. A car will come for you at 7. Wear whatever makes you feel like yourself. Come as you are. That has always been enough. Imani listened to the message 4 times. Then she went into her closet and looked at what she had, which was not much, and her hand stopped on the one good thing she owned. A dress her mother had bought her for her 20th birthday. Before the collapse, before all of it, a simple sheath in deep sapphire blue. The same blue as the blazer, she realized. The color they'd made her wear while they robbed her. She took it off the hanger. She would wear their color to their party, and she would wear it as herself. The ballroom of the Whitfield Hotel had been done in gold and low light, and the estate collection sat under glass on lit pedestals like small captured fires, and 300 of Sterling and Vane's most important people moved through it with champagne in their hands. Bianca Coleman arrived at 8 in a crimson-red gown that fit like it had been sewn onto her, red soles flashing under the lights. Diamonds at her throat that she had borrowed from the store's loan program and did not intend to give back. She looked magnificent. She knew it. She worked the room, like the future she'd built for herself was already hers, laughing at the right jokes, touching the right forearms, drifting always toward the front, toward the stage, toward the reserved tables where the Sterlings would sit. At 7 o'clock, 3 miles away, a black car had pulled up outside a building with a broken elevator in Bankhead, and Imani Robinson had come down the stairs in a sapphire blue sheath, dress with her mother's kiss still on her cheek, and her brother's whistle of approval in her ears, and gotten into the car and ridden toward the thing she could not yet see the shape of. She walked into the ballroom at 8:20, and the room did not know her, and that was its own strange freedom. No badge, no blazer, no manager's eyes on her back. Just a young woman in blue, alone, taking it in. A server offered her champagne and she took it and didn't drink it, holding it the way you hold a prop that gives your hands something to do. She'd been in this ballroom exactly one time, at a training 2 years ago, standing against the wall in the faded blazer. Now she stood in the middle of the floor and let them mistake her for a guest, because tonight, for once, that's what she was. Bianca saw her from across the room. The recognition happened in stages across Bianca's face. First the frown of a person seeing something that doesn't fit, then the widening of the eyes, then a flush that climbed up from the crimson neckline. She set down her champagne. She came across that ballroom fast, red soles ticking hard against the marble, and she got into Imani's space close, her voice a hiss pitched under the music. "What in God's name are you doing here?" "I was invited," Imani said. "You were suspended. You're under investigation for theft. You have no business." "I was invited," Imani said again, and she did not raise her voice, and she did not step back, and something about her stillness made Bianca's own voice falter. By name. There's a car and everything. Bianca's jaw worked. Around them, a few heads had begun to turn. You think this is a game? You think you show up in a little blue dress and... I will have security remove you. I will have you arrested. You are a thief, Imani. You are a nobody who got caught, and by Monday you'll be Bianca. A new voice, low and slow, and Bianca spun around. Xavier Sterling stood there in a black suit, and beside him, in a column of unhurried silver and deep charcoal, stood the old woman. The one from the store, the one in the cardigan. Except there was no cardigan now, and no canvas tote, and no tiredness in the way she held herself. She stood like the room belonged to her, because it did, and Bianca's mind was visibly scrambling to reconcile the bag lady she'd complained about with the woman she was looking at. You've met my grandmother, Xavier said, though I don't think you were introduced. Bianca Coleman, this is Vivian Sterling, chair of the board. The name on the building. The champagne glass in Bianca's hand did not fall, quite, but her fingers went white around the stem. Mrs. Sterling, she started. What an honor. I didn't. If I'd known you were in the store, I would have. Yes, Vivian said, you would have. That's rather the point of not telling you. Her old voice was mild and it cut like nothing Imani had ever heard. I came into your store on a Thursday afternoon. I was thirsty and it was 101 degrees. Do you remember what you did? She waited. Bianca did not answer. You told your associate to watch the door didn't hit me on the way out. And then, when that same associate brought me a glass of water, you called it a waste. Vivian's eyes did not blink. A glass of water. Wasted. On me. Mrs. Sterling, there's been a misunderstanding. There has been no misunderstanding, Vivian said. There has been a great deal of very clear understanding. Xavier. And here the room truly began to turn, because Xavier Sterling stepped up onto the low stage, where the collection was to be presented, and he tapped the microphone. And 300 of the most important people in southeastern luxury retail turned toward him with their champagne, and the music dropped. And Bianca Coleman stood frozen in her crimson gown in the middle of the floor with nowhere to go. Thank you all for coming, Xavier said. Before we unveil the collection, I want to talk for a moment about what this company is supposed to be. His slow voice filled the room. My grandmother started Sterling and Vane 51 years ago with a single case of estate pieces and one rule she has never let me forget. That the measure of this company is not what we sell, but how we treat the person who can't afford to buy. She has spent 5 decades walking into her own stores, dressed as someone the world thinks it can ignore, to find out who we really are when we think no one's watching. A pause. 6 weeks ago, she walked into our Lenox location, and what she found there is why I'm going to do something at this gala that has never been done at one of these. He nodded to someone at the back, and the large screen behind the stage, meant for the collection, lit up instead with a spreadsheet. This is the commission ledger for the Lenox store, the last 12 months, verified by our external auditors. The columns were legible even from the floor. You'll see one associate logged the most floor hours, the most customer contacts, and the most closed sales in the store. A name highlighted. Robinson, I. And you'll see that a suspicious volume of that associate's high-value commission was reassigned after the fact to a single other employee number. A second name highlighted, in red. Coleman, B. A sound went through the ballroom, low, the sound of 300 people inhaling at once. Bianca found her voice. This is out of context. Those were team sales. I supervised. You were in your office, Xavier said, and the screen changed. Security stills, time-stamped, side by side with the ledger. Bianca at her desk at 2:14 p.m. The Okafor sale, closing on the floor at 2:14 p.m. Imani at the register The Okafor family shaking her hand. The commission posting to Coleman B at 8:47 p.m. The cameras don't take team sales, they take pictures. You can't. Bianca's composure was coming apart in real time now, the lacquer cracking. You have no right to. There's more, Xavier said, almost gently. Tell them about the ring, Bianca. The screen changed again. And now it was the back hallway of the Lennox store. The full 30-day loop that Bianca had sworn only held 72 hours, and the timestamp read the Friday of the lunch rotation. And there was Bianca Coleman in a crimson dress, walking into the employee locker room with a small square of tissue paper in her hand, and walking out 90 seconds later with her hand empty. The ballroom made no sound at all. The ring valued at $12,000, Xavier said into the silence, which was reported stolen and recovered from Ms. Robinson's locker and used to suspend her from her job with a sick mother at home. He let it hang, placed there by the manager who reported it, on camera, which you told loss prevention did not exist. Bianca Coleman stood in the middle of that gold ballroom in her magnificent red dress and looked, for the first time in the 2 years anyone had known her, like exactly what she was. A person who had built her standing on other people's stolen work, watching it come down all at once in public, with photographs. And then Imani stepped forward. She hadn't planned to, but she'd been standing there through all of it. And there was one thing the audit and the cameras couldn't give the room, and it was hers to give. I have something too, she said, and her voice carried, quiet and clear. She held up her phone. I knew. For a year I knew she was taking my commission, and I was too scared to say anything, because I needed the job and I knew exactly how it would go if I complained. She looked around the room, at the managers, at the ones who'd gone quiet, and some of them could not meet her eyes, because some of them had done their own quiet swallowing. So every time she did it, I took a screenshot, the date, the sale, the number she changed it to. 14 of them. She lowered the phone. I wasn't waiting to get her. I was waiting to survive. There's a difference. And I want the people in this room who are scared right now to hear it. You keep the receipts not because you're brave. You keep them because being quiet and being erased are two different things, and the receipts are how you stay real when somebody's trying to make you disappear. Nobody clapped. It wasn't that kind of moment. It was better than that kind of moment. It was the kind where a room full of comfortable people gets quiet, because a true thing has been said in front of them, and they can't unhear it. And in that quiet, if you'd been watching the managers along the edges of the room, and Vivian Sterling was watching them, she watched them the whole time, you'd have seen something move across a dozen faces. Not guilt about Imani, exactly. Recognition. Because more than one of them had a version of this in their own store. A top associate whose numbers looked a little low. A commission line that ran a little heavy toward the manager. A young worker who never complained and maybe should have. They heard Imani say, "You keep the receipts," because being quiet and being erased are two different things. And some of them were doing the math on which side of that they'd been standing on, and the math was not comfortable, and it was not supposed to be. One manager, a man near the back named Terrence, who ran the store in Charlotte, would drive home that night and open his own commission ledger and sit with it for a long time and fix 3 things by morning that no one had caught, because no one had been looking. That's the part of justice that doesn't fit on a screen or in a headline. It isn't only the villain going down. It's the decent people in the room deciding, quietly, to be a little less willing to look away tomorrow than they were today. Imani never knew about Terrence. She'd said her piece to the whole room and let it land where it landed, and that was the right way to do it. because you don't get to choose who your honesty saves. Vivian Sterling crossed the floor to Bianca Coleman, and she stopped in front of her, and she looked up at the taller, younger woman for a long moment. "You're terminated, effective immediately," Vivian said. "But that's the small part, and you know it. The commission you took is documented, which makes it wage theft, which is a matter for the Labor Board, and possibly the district attorney. And my company is going to cooperate fully with both. Because I would rather lose money making this right than keep a dime that came from a girl who rode a bus to work." Her voice never rose. "You put a ring in a child's locker to destroy her. You'll answer for that too. Security is at the doors. You may hand back my diamonds on your way out. They were never yours either." Bianca reached up with shaking hands and unclasped the borrowed diamonds from her throat and set them into Vivian's waiting palm. And then 2 security men appeared at her elbows. And she was walked out of that ballroom through 300 silent people, red souls ticking slower now, and out into the Buckhead night, and out of this story. The gala went on, because galas do. The collection was unveiled. The champagne kept coming. But the night had changed its shape, and everyone in that ballroom carried something different out of it than what they'd carried in. They gave Imani back her commission, all of it. Not as a gesture, as a correction. $51,000 in reassigned earnings, traced sale by sale through a year of ledgers, paid out in a single deposit that Imani stared at on her phone in the back of the black car on the way home until the numbers stopped looking like numbers. It was enough to catch up the medication for a year. It was enough to buy Trey shoes and then some. It was enough, she thought, to breathe. But money returned is only justice for the past, and Vivian Sterling was interested in the future. 3 days after the gala, Imani was asked to come to the corporate office downtown, and she went up 40 floors in a glass elevator to a room with a view of the whole city. And Vivian and Xavier were waiting, and Vivian slid a folder across the table. "Regional training lead," Vivian said. "You'd oversee floor standards and associate development across 11 stores in the Southeast. You'd teach people to do what you already do. The salary is in the folder. So is the benefits package, which I'm told is rather better than what you had." Imani looked at the folder and did not open it. And then she said the thing she'd been feeling since the car ride home. The thing she needed to say, even though it might cost her. "No." Xavier blinked. Vivian did not. "I appreciate it," Imani said. "I do. But I know what this looks like, and I know what it would feel like. The girl who got framed, the sad story, and the rich family who felt bad and gave her a title to fix their guilt." She shook her head. "I don't want a job because you feel sorry for me, Mrs. Sterling. I've had enough of being the person things happen to. If I take this, I need to know I earned it, and I can't know that, because how could I? After everything you saw, after you drove to my apartment, after the gala, how could I ever know it was the work and not the pity?" The room was quiet. Xavier started to say something, and Vivian raised one finger and he stopped. "Open the folder," Vivian said. Imani opened it. The top page was not an offer letter. It was a spreadsheet. The same one from the gala screen, the Lennox ledger, 12 months, every associate. "Look at the sales per hour column," Vivian said. "Not total sales. Sales per hour on the floor, which controls for how many shifts a person worked. It's the truest number in retail, and it's the one number a manager can't fake by stealing credit, because it's measured against the clock." She let Imani find it. "You're first. Not first at that store, first in the region. 11 stores, over 200 associates, and the highest sales per hour figure belongs to a girl who rode a bus in from Bankhead and got robbed of the commission that would have proved it." Imani stared at the number. I didn't offer you this job because I feel sorry for you, Vivian said, and her old voice had no softness in it now, only iron. I don't hire out of pity. Pity builds nothing. I offered you this job because you are, by the only metric that can't be gamed, the best salesperson this company has. And I would be a fool to let the best salesperson I have keep folding sweaters because a thief made her afraid. She sat back. The kindness to my glass of water is why I noticed you. This, she tapped the spreadsheet, is why I'm hiring you. Don't confuse the two. The first got you looked at. The second is what you'll be paid for. Imani read the number one more time. First in the region. Measured against the clock which could not be stolen. I earned that, she said. Not a question. You earned that, Vivian said. The rest of it, the theft, the ring, the walk out of the store in front of everyone, none of that was earned, and none of it was your fault, and I can't give it back to you. But this number is yours, and it was always yours, and no one can take it now. She slid a pen across the table. So, regional training lead. Not because you're pitiable, because you're the best. Do you want the job or not? Imani picked up the pen. She was very good at the job, as it turned out. Better than good. Because she taught it the way she'd learned it. From the bottom, from the bus. From the faded blazer, she made everyone keep clean. Not because it was policy, but because self-respect in hard times is a muscle, and it needs the exercise. She rebuilt the commission system so it couldn't be rerouted by a manager's employee number without a second sign-off. She wrote the associate handbook section on wage theft herself, in plain language, with the phone number for the labor board, printed right there on the page, because she'd learned that the scared version of herself would have used it if she'd only known it existed. 3 managers across the region quietly cleaned up their practices the month that handbook went out. She never found out which 3. She didn't need to. Bianca Coleman was charged. The wage theft was too documented to ignore, and the planted ring became a separate matter, and it moved through the system slowly the way these things do, and the outcome, when it came, was not a movie ending. It was a plea and restitution, and a record that would follow her into every hiring background check for the rest of her working life. She did not go to prison. She went to something quieter and longer, a life in which the thing she'd built her standing on was gone, and everyone in her industry knew why, and no one would hand her a set of keys to a store again. Restorative justice is rarely as loud as we want it to be. It is usually just a door closing, permanently, on the thing a person wanted most. And Xavier. That took longer, and it was supposed to, and Imani made sure of it. He asked her to dinner 4 months after the gala, once she was fully in the job, once the number in the spreadsheet had done its work, and she knew, all the way down, that she was standing on ground she'd earned. She said yes to the dinner. She said no to anything faster than a walk. She told him plainly, over that first dinner, that she would not be a story about a poor girl saved by a rich man, that if there was going to be a them, it would be built like everything else she trusted was built. Slowly, on the clock. Provable, and Xavier Sterling, who had learned patience from the same woman who'd hired her, said that sounded exactly right, and meant it. They took their time. It was better for the taking. A year after the gala, Sterling and Vane opened a new location in a part of Atlanta that the luxury market had always written off. A neighborhood not unlike Bankhead, and the choice made no sense to the analysts, who said there was no money there. Vivian Sterling overruled them, the way she'd overruled people for 50 years. There's money everywhere, she said. There's just more of it in the places where nobody bothers to treat people right. We'll be the ones who bother. She put Imani in charge of building the store's culture from the first hire. The morning it opened, Imani stood on the new floor in a well-cut suit the color of sapphire. She'd never worn another color, and never would, and watched her first class of associates come through the door, and most of them had ridden a bus to get there, and she looked at them and saw 14 versions of a girl who used to iron her blazer on a kitchen table because she couldn't afford an ironing board. She had them for an hour before the doors opened. She could have told them about carrot weight and clarity and closing technique, and she would, later, over weeks. That first hour, she spent on one thing. Somebody's going to walk in here who doesn't look like they can afford anything, she said. Tired. Bad shoes. A canvas bag instead of a purse. And every instinct this industry trains into you is going to say, don't waste your time. She looked at them one by one. You bring that person a glass of water, the good glass. You give them your full 40 minutes. Not because they might secretly be rich. Some of them will be, and it won't be the point. You do it because a person came into your store thirsty on a hot day, and you had water, and you had a chair, and you had the power to make them feel like a human being, or like garbage. And which one you chose is the only thing about this job that will ever actually matter. She paused. I know that because somebody chose garbage, once, about a woman I brought a glass of water to. And I know because that woman turned out to own the company, and that's the part people always want to focus on. But listen to me. That's the boring part. That's luck. She let that sit. The part that isn't luck is that I'd have brought her the water either way. That's the only part you control. Control it. Her mother, Gloria, came to the opening. She was doing better. The medication had held. The year of paid-up co-pays had brought a stability. The doctors were cautious, but not unhappy about. And she stood in the corner in her church dress, watching her daughter run a room full of people. And when Imani caught her eye across the floor, Gloria put her hand flat over her own heart, the failing heart, the one that had started all of it by faltering in a kitchen years ago. And she held it there. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Trey, 17 now and taller than Imani by a head, was outside by the black car, which was theirs now, which Imani had bought, used, and paid for herself, in cash, from the salary of a job she'd earned by the only number nobody could steal. He was leaning on the hood in new shoes, pretending to be too cool for any of it, and failing and grinning. Imani unlocked the doors of the store at 10. The first person through was an older man in a work shirt with paint on the cuffs, who looked around at the cases with his hands in his pockets like he wasn't sure he was allowed. And a new associate, a young woman in a green apron, first day nervous, glanced at Imani, and Imani gave her the smallest nod. And the young woman crossed the floor to the man and said, warm and full, "Good morning, sir. Can I get you anything? Water? It's supposed to hit 95 today. I know that walk's no joke." The man's face changed. Something behind his eyes, confirming something he'd suspected. Imani watched it happen and did not smile, quite. She just stood in her sapphire suit in the middle of the floor of the store she'd built, in a neighborhood the market had written off, and watched a stranger get handed the good glass. And let that be enough. Outside, Trey leaned on the car in his new shoes. The heat came up off the pavement in waves. The bus, the number 12, rolled past on Peachtree behind him, full of people going to work. And Imani watched it go through the glass, and she did not have to be on it. And she thought about all the mornings she had been, and then she turned back to her floor. If you've listened this far, sit with me for a moment before you go, because I want to tell you why this story stays with me. And it isn't the gala. I've worked in rooms like that jewelry store. Most of us have, one way or another, a place where the people at the top decided long ago that some human beings are worth full attention and some are worth none. and where the ones at the bottom learn to read that math in the first 10 seconds. What gets me about Imani is not that she was rewarded. Rewards are the part we like, but they're the least reliable part of real life. Sometimes the kind person gets the company. Most of the time, the kind person gets nothing but the knowledge that they stayed themselves. What gets me is the water. The choice she'd have made whether or not anyone important was watching. That's the whole thing. That's the part that's actually in your hands and mine. Because here is what's true, off the screen, in the world you're going back to when this ends. Wage theft is real, and it is common, and it is not a costume drama villain twirling a mustache. It is a quiet reassignment on a screen, done to people who are too afraid to speak because the job is the medication, is the mother, is the rent. If it's being done to you, you are not powerless, and you are not alone. In the United States, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission handles workplace harassment and discrimination, and you can reach them at 1-800-669-4000. The Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division investigates stolen wages and unpaid commissions, and they take reports regardless of immigration status. If someone at home is being hurt, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. If an older person in your life is being financially exploited the way that store tried to exploit its own workers, the National Elder Fraud Hotline is 1-833-372-8311. And if the weight of it all has ever made you feel like you can't go on, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is there, day or night, at 988. Write these down. Laws differ from state to state, and none of this is legal advice. It's a place to start, and a hand to hold on the way to a real one. The screenshots Imani kept were her version of knowing her rights. Know yours. I don't know who's listening tonight. Maybe you're on a bus right now. Maybe you ironed something on a kitchen table this morning. Whoever you are, the woman who owns the building might be standing right in front of you tomorrow, in a grey cardigan, and you'll never know it, and it won't be the point. Bring her the water anyway. Bring everybody the water. That's the part that was always yours.